Along with the warranties that you may get when you install or purchase a solar system, there are additional guarantee types that could be provided as an add-on. The most common one is the availability guarantee. This comes down from the utility scale side of the industry, where large projects are being built. The financiers who are backing these projects want assurance that what they're building, what they're financing, they'll be getting the return that they expect. So that was the basis at the beginning of the industry, like getting people to adopt this technology when it was new, to be assured that they would be getting the return on their investment. So that started with an availability guarantee. Availability is a kind of crude way of saying, yes, it will work. It's during an hour-long period. Was the equipment available? Was it ready to perform if the conditions were right for it to perform? Typically, this was in the wind industry, like all the motors, all the turbines were ready to generate if the wind was blowing. So it was counted as being available for that hour if nothing was wrong with it. This transferred over to the solar industry, where if the sun is shining, is the system ready to go? And there are different ways to do availability. You can do a whole system availability. Is any piece of the system ready to go or not? Or what's more common is at the inverter level, is an individual inverter ready to go? Is it in a ready to go state available? Or is it not? And then the simple way to do it, you get a 0 if it's not available, a 1 if it is. And typically a lot of these are based on the solar resource. You don't count every hour of the day. So a nighttime hour that it's ready to go doesn't count. But generally any time after sunrise and before sunset, if the irradiance, which is the measure of watts hitting the earth, of solar resource hitting the earth, if it's above a certain threshold, you count the hours where it is above that threshold. And I think we typically use 100 watts per square meter as enough to turn on a solar system. I mean, a max would be about 1,000 watts per square meter. So over the course of a day, you might get 8 to 12 hours of sun where the system could be on, and then you count the time that each of the inverters is available to go. And a typical measurement of availability is 99%, say for a staffed plant, like a utility scale plant. When you're not staffed, typically people still want the 99%, but when you're deploying a resource, probably more like 98 or 97% availability. They're not going to like those numbers, but 99% is what you expect most systems to be on most of the time. Other types of guarantees would be a performance guarantee, which is more tied to the actual performance, tied to the weather adjusted resource that's available. So I liken this one to a cafe standard on a car. You get your miles per gallon. You're going to get 30 miles per gallon, but then you get the lead foot driving. They may actually only get 25 miles per gallon, or they're driving uphill. They may only get 25 miles per gallon. So how is it performing in real world situations? So with a performance guarantee, you want to know, is it performing the way it is supposed to be performing under the conditions it's aware of? This ties more closely. So an hour in July in the Northern Hemisphere is worth way more than an hour in December in the Northern Hemisphere, where there's so much less solar resource hitting. So you would expect a lot more energy. So you're guaranteeing it based on the amount of energy coming out. So for every kilowatt hour that's produced or missing, there's either you're hitting your number, we'll get into what the penalties are. An interesting way with this, another way to do this is as an energy guarantee, which you take a typical year and you compare the actual performance of the system to what it would have done in a typical year. So you're kind of ensuring cash flow that way. You're not basing it on what it's supposed to be seen by the weather it saw, but based on a typical year. So some years the sun may be 10% stronger than in other years, or less clouds. Other years it may be 10% low, but regardless, you're going to guarantee that output based on what you expected to get. So companies that like a steady cash flow will often prefer that type of a model relative to the performance guarantee. They're very similar, but slightly different. As service providers don't necessarily like this because they don't control all of those inputs into performance risk. And they're not involved with modeling. They're not involved with equipment selection. They're not involved with the construction quality. What they do control is the service piece. So they will often sign up for a response time guarantee. That means their technicians will get to the site within a certain amount of time. And it's a little more difficult to guarantee resolution time, but that is something that sometimes gets conflated with response time guarantee, because you need to get to the site to understand what the issue is. If you can resolve it there without any new parts or parts that are on site, you get it fixed. But if you need to order parts, sometimes that delay in ordering the parts could be excluded from a resolution time guarantee. But I actually haven't seen a resolution time guarantee. I've seen response time guarantees. So most service providers will provide that, but not full-on performance guarantees. Sometimes they will also provide availability guarantees. It's rare that they'll provide performance guarantees. Even more rare is a revenue guarantee, where you're actually guaranteeing the revenue generated by the plant relative to the expected revenue generated by the plant. This would typically, in my mind, be more by a developer to an owner. Like, they are committing that everything is going to run according to the way they developed it. And I think that's probably more common in residential. Like, if you sell a homeowner a solar system, you guarantee that they will get so much offset of their utility bills. And if not, they will cover the difference. That's really the only way I've seen that one done.